Welcome back to our Philippine Independence Special in honor of Philippine Independence Month. Wow, Rizal, has it really been 117 years since the Spanish colonialism ended?
It has. It's been a long time and many things have changed since.
Indeed. By the way, fun fact about me and Rizal, we're not only kababayans here in Guam, we're also from the same small town in the Philippines.
Can you believe it? Naik, Cavite. Janela and I didn't know each other growing up, and although we are not related, we have mutual relatives, and our families even know each other.
You can say that Rizal and I are kind of like neighbors in the Philippines. It's not often na meron kang kilala dito sa Guam na galing din sa munisipalyo mo.
Most of the time, kung meron kang kilala dito sa Guam na tiga sa inyo din sa Pilipinas, ibig sabihin nun may pagkarelasyon kayo. Pero Janela and I are not related at all. So to be working for the same company, Sorensen Media Group, makes it even better.
And we hail from the same hometown. That's truly rare. Anyway, before we go, let's take a look at what happened to the Philippines after the Spaniards left.
This will explain modern Philippines as it is today, as we take a look at why our culture is one of the most diverse in Asia, with the influence of not just the Spanish, but the Americans as well.
The Philippines may have declared June 12, 1898 as their date of independence, but it took several decades for that to become official. Surprise, surprise. This is because of the Americans. Yes. So, while the Philippines declared independence from Spain, there was still some resistance from the Americans. Emilio Aguinaldo, who led the Filipino uprising against the Spanish, was unhappy with peace negotiations the Americans were trying to make with Spain. Aguinaldo wanted a Philippine government free and clear of any foreign influences. The Philippines even drafted its own democratic constitution with Aguinaldo as the president. The Treaty of Paris with Spain was formulated and the U.S. Senate voted to ratify the treaty, which officially made the Philippines a territory of the United States. This pissed off the Filipinos, and another war broke out, this time with the Americans. The war continued for a few more years, but Aguinaldo eventually ceded to the U.S., calling for an end to Philippine rebellion. This didn't quite work out, though, as many of Aguinaldo's followers refused to accept defeat, so the war continued. The war was so ugly that at one point, U.S. troops even attacked an entire island, killing everyone over the age of 10, including women. The war eventually ended as the Philippine forces were outnumbered. Over the next few decades, the U.S. government worked to establish a democracy in the Philippines. The Catholic religion was removed as a state religion, an Organic Act was created, and the beginning of a government was established with a bicameral legislature. During this time, the Filipinos continued to press the U.S. government about their independence. That campaign, however, was temporarily halted as the U.S. was threatened by Germany during World War I. The campaign continued after the war ended, and a delegation of Filipinos went to the U.S. to speak personally with President Woodrow Wilson's Secretary of War, Newton Baker. President Wilson agreed with the Philippines' appeal, noting that the Filipinos had done everything that was asked of them. President Wilson called for U.S. Congress to grant independence to the Philippines. However, this did not immediately happen. At the time that Wilson, a Democrat, was president, Congress was Republican-controlled.
For years, the Filipinos would send a delegation to the U.S. for discussions on Philippine independence called independence missions, and for years they were unsuccessful. Finally, in 1934, the Tidings-MacDuff Act of 1934 was passed, which would grant independence to the Philippines after 10 years, but would allow the U.S. to keep some military bases on the islands. With this new law, the Philippines was able to use 10 years as a transition period wherein they established the Commonwealth era. This was all working fine until the Second World War broke out with Japan. The Philippines, as you may already know, was among the countries attacked by Japanese forces. This war brought the Philippines and U.S. closer together as they fought off the Japanese. But even with the help of the Americans, many Filipinos perished in this war. Over 1 million Filipinos died, and many parts of the Philippines were left destroyed. This war delayed the independence of the Philippines by a few years, but ultimately, after World War II ended, Philippine independence was granted on July 4, 1946, which some might argue is when the Philippines truly became independent. For the next 15 years, Philippine independence was observed on July 4th, but in 1962, President Diosdado Macapagal changed that to June 12, which is the same date that the Philippines gained independence from Spain. For the next 20 to 30 years, the Americans continued to influence Philippine government and culture. During this time, many more fast food restaurant chains started to pop up in the Philippines. The English language slowly infiltrated the school system and soon became a requirement for students to learn. Finally, in 1992, one of the last influences of American government and culture in the Philippines departed with the closure of Subic Bay in Olongapo. Now, Subic Bay operates mostly as a ship repair facility.
All right, so that about covers Philippine history spanning some 10 centuries.
We hope you enjoyed our Philippine Independence show and even learned a few things about the Philippines.
Don't forget to tune in on July 6th for our final episode of Philippine Independence, where we'll talk about some of the fun events that have taken place on Guam for this celebration.
Ako po ay si Rosel Romanes.
At ako po ay si Janela Carrera. Magandang gabi and mabuhay! Magandang gabi sa inyo. Hafa din, magandang gabi.
Ang balita nyo.
Ang balita nyo ay galing din sa munisipalyo mo.
Most of the time, kung meron kang kilala dito sa Guam, na tiga sa inyo de...
Sorry.
The influences of the Spaniards in the Philippines and why we made we can have a Philippine news
Yeah,
station.
Philippine news, the newscast, we should do it in Philippines.